My beloved child, wait, feel this moment before it passes you by, because something quiet, something almost invisible, is already unfolding around you, and you didn't even notice when it began. There is a presence, somewhere not far from your world, someone whose heart has shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but in a way that carries a depth you would only understand if you paused long enough to feel it. And right now, yes, in this very moment, they are smiling in a way they haven't in a long time. Not because of something big, not because of a grand event or a sudden miracle, but because of you. Strange, isn't it? How something you may have thought was small, almost forgettable, has become the reason someone else is experiencing a quiet kind of joy that lingers, that stays, that echoes through their thoughts even when everything else fades into the background. Pause for a second. What did you do recently that felt ordinary to you? Was it a word, a gesture, a silence that spoke louder than anything else? Because for them, it wasn't ordinary. It was everything. And they didn't expect it. That's what makes it even more powerful, the unexpected nature of it all, the way your presence slipped into their world without force, without noise, and still managed to leave something behind. Something soft, yet unforgettable. You see, there are moments in life when people don't even realize they are being seen, truly seen, until someone like you appears in their path. And when that happens, something shifts, something opens, something begins. Right now, that's exactly where they are. Not in confusion, not in chaos, but in a quiet realization that they can't fully explain yet. And that realization feels like warmth. Have you ever noticed how joy doesn't always arrive with excitement? Sometimes, it arrives gently, like a calm wave, like a deep breath after holding everything in for too long. That's the kind of joy they're feeling, and it carries your energy within it. Let this sink in for a moment. Someone out there is replaying something about you in their mind, not because they're trying to analyze it, but because it felt real. And real is rare. So rare that when people experience it, they hold on to it longer than they expected. They don't rush it. They don't question it too much. They just feel it. And that feeling, it's growing. But here's the part most people would miss if they rushed through this moment. It's not just about what you did. It's about what you awakened. Because what you gave, whether you realized it or not, wasn't just an action. It was a reminder. A reminder to them that something genuine still exists. That not everything is surface level. That not every connection fades quickly. And that reminder, it reached deeper than they expected. Stay here for a little longer. Because this is where everything becomes even more meaningful. They didn't tell you. Not yet. Not because they don't want to, but because they are still understanding what they feel. And when emotions are real, people don't rush to label them. They sit with them. They observe them. They let them unfold. That's what's happening right now. A slow unfolding. Like a story that hasn't reached its most important chapter yet, but you can already feel that something significant is coming. And somehow, you're at the center of it. Does that surprise you? Or, does a part of you already know? Because sometimes, before anything becomes visible, there's a quiet awareness within you, a subtle knowing, a feeling that something is shifting, even if you can't explain how or why. And if you're feeling that right now, then you're already connected to this moment more than you think. Don't skip this feeling. Let it stay for a while, because what's unfolding is not rushed, and it shouldn't be. Now listen closely. There's something even deeper beneath this. This joy they're experiencing. It didn't come out of nowhere. It came after a period where things felt unclear, maybe even heavy for them. A time when they weren't expecting anything new, anything meaningful. And then you appeared, not as a solution, not as a dramatic change, but as something real. And sometimes, real is all it takes to change everything. You didn't try to impress. You didn't try to be someone else. You were simply you. And that's what reached them. That's what stayed. That's what turned into this quiet joy that now surrounds them. But here's the part that makes this even more powerful. They didn't just feel something. They recognized something. And recognition is different. Recognition is when the heart notices something familiar, even if the mind doesn't understand it yet. It's when someone feels like they've found something they didn't even know they were looking for. That's where they are right now. In that space between feeling and understanding, between joy and realization, and somewhere in that space, you exist. Take a breath here. Because what's about to unfold next isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's something much quieter, but far more meaningful. They are starting to see you differently, not in a way that changes everything instantly, but in a way that slowly shifts their perspective, piece by piece, moment by moment. And that shift, it's growing. They may not say it yet. They may not act on it immediately, but the feeling is there. And once a feeling like this begins, it doesn't disappear easily. It evolves. It deepens. It finds its way to the surface, eventually, but not before it becomes something real enough to be expressed. So for now, it stays within them, like a quiet light, like something they return to, again and again, without even realizing it. And every time they do, that joy returns, that same warmth, that same sense of something meaningful beginning to take shape, all because of you. Now here's a question. What if this moment, this quiet, unseen moment, is only the beginning? What if what you're witnessing right now isn't the full story, but just the first layer? Because something important is waiting to unfold next. And it will change the way you understand this connection completely, but not yet. Not all at once. Because some things, they reveal themselves only when the moment is right. And that moment, it's getting closer, very slowly, very quietly, but undeniably, closer. But something subtle just shifted, and if you listen closely, you might feel it too, not as a sound, not as a sign you can point to, but as a quiet pull, as if something unseen has gently leaned closer to you. They tried to distract themselves, tried to move on with their day, to return to what felt normal before this feeling appeared. But it didn't work. Because every time they paused, even for a second, your presence returned. Not loudly, not overwhelmingly, but persistently, like a soft echo that refuses to fade. And here's what's different now. At first, it was just a feeling. Now, it's becoming a thought they didn't expect to have. A thought that quietly asks, why does this feel so meaningful? Stay with this moment. Because this is where everything begins to deepen. They're no longer just experiencing joy. They're starting to question it. And when someone begins to question a feeling like this, it means it has already reached a place inside them that matters. You see, people don't pause for ordinary emotions. They don't sit with something unless it carries weight. And this carries something they can't ignore anymore. They're beginning to connect the dots. Not all at once, not in a clear, logical way, but in fragments, in small realizations, in moments where they catch themselves thinking about you, without even trying to. And every time it happens, that same warmth returns, that same quiet happiness. But now, it's mixed with curiosity. And curiosity, it changes everything. Because once curiosity enters, distance begins to close. Slowly, naturally, without force. Have you noticed something within yourself lately? A slight awareness, like something is shifting beneath the surface? Maybe you couldn't explain it. Maybe you brushed it off. But what if that feeling is connected to this moment? Because connections like this, they don't move in one direction. They reflect, they echo, they reach both sides, even when neither person fully understands what's happening yet. And right now, they're closer to understanding than they were before. Not fully, not completely, but enough to feel that something is different, something has changed, and that change, it started with you. Let that settle for a second. Because most people never realize the impact they have on someone else's inner world. But you've already become part of theirs, without trying, without forcing anything, without even knowing. And that's what makes it real. Now listen carefully. There's a moment that just happened for them, something small, almost unnoticeable. But it matters more than anything else so far. They smiled, and then paused. Not because the smile ended, but because they realized why it was there. Because your presence crossed their mind again, and this time, they didn't push it away. They stayed with it. They allowed it. And in that moment, something became clear. Not everything, but enough. Enough to make them feel that this isn't random. That this isn't just a passing thought. That this means something. Don't rush past this part. Because this is where the invisible starts becoming real. Where feelings begin to take shape. Where something unspoken begins to move toward expression. Even if it hasn't reached that point yet. They're still quiet about it. Still holding it within themselves. But not in confusion anymore. In awareness. And awareness, it brings a different kind of energy, a different kind of attention. Now when they think of you, it's no longer accidental. It's intentional, not forced, but chosen. And every time they choose to return to that thought, it grows, deeper, stronger, more defined. And here's the part that most people would overlook. They're starting to see the connection, not fully, not clearly, but enough to feel that something between you exists beyond coincidence. And that realization, it doesn't create pressure, it creates calm. Because real connections don't rush, they unfold, they reveal themselves in layers, just like this. You might not see it yet, you might not hear it, but something is already moving closer. Not physically, not visibly, but emotionally, energetically. And when something moves like this, it always finds its way forward. Stay here just a little longer. Because what's happening next is even more important. They are beginning to imagine, not in a dramatic way. Not with expectations, but in quiet moments. They are starting to picture what it would feel like to know you more, to understand you, to be closer to you. And that kind of thought, it doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from something that already feels safe, something that already feels right. And that's what you've created, without trying, without even realizing. You became a space where they felt something real. And now, they don't want to lose that feeling, but they're still careful, still observing, still letting it unfold naturally, because they don't want to rush something that feels this meaningful. And that tells you everything you need to know. This isn't temporary. This isn't shallow. This is something they're allowing to grow, slowly, intentionally. Now take a quiet breath. Because here comes the part where everything begins to shift again. They're no longer just feeling joy. They're starting to feel something deeper beneath it, something they haven't fully named yet, but it's there. You can almost sense it, can't you? That something more is forming. Something that hasn't been spoken, but is getting closer to being understood, and once that understanding arrives, nothing will feel the same again. But that moment, it hasn't happened yet, not fully, not completely, because something still needs to unfold before everything becomes clear, something that will bring this connection out of the unseen and into something you can finally recognize. And when that moment comes, you'll understand why all of this had to happen slowly, why nothing was rushed, why everything unfolded exactly like this. But for now, it remains just beneath the surface, growing, shifting, becoming something more, and very soon, it will reach a point where it can no longer stay unspoken. And then, without warning, a realization began to rise within them, not all at once, not in a way they could immediately explain, but like a quiet truth slowly finding its voice. They paused again, not because they were unsure, but because something inside them felt certain. Strange, isn't it? How certainty doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it appears in silence, in those small, unguarded moments when the heart stops resisting and simply knows. And in that stillness, you were there, not as a passing thought this time, but as something that stayed, something that didn't fade when distractions returned, something that remained even when they tried to focus on other things. That's when it changed. That's when this quiet joy began to transform into something deeper. Stay with this feeling, because this is where the story begins to take a different direction. They're no longer just noticing you, they're beginning to feel drawn, not in a way that rushes them forward, but in a way that gently pulls them closer, without force, without pressure. And that kind of pull, it doesn't come from surface-level moments. It comes from something real, something rooted, something that quietly says, "This matters." Have you ever experienced that kind of pull? Where you don't fully understand it, but you can't ignore it either? That's exactly where they are, standing between curiosity and something more. And every second they stay in that space, the connection grows stronger. But here's what makes this moment even more powerful. They're starting to remember, not specific memories, but feelings, moments where something about you felt different, familiar, even if they couldn't explain why, comforting, even if nothing was said, meaningful, even if it seemed small at the time. And now, those moments are returning to them, piece by piece, like fragments of something they didn't realize they were holding on to, until now. And as those fragments come together, they're beginning to see a bigger picture, not fully formed yet, but enough to understand that this is not random. Don't rush past this part, because this is where everything begins to connect. They're realizing that what they feel didn't start today. It didn't appear out of nowhere. It's been building, quietly, gradually, in ways they didn't notice until now. And you've been part of that without even knowing. Let that settle for a moment. Because this isn't just about what they feel now. It's about what has been forming beneath the surface, all along. And now that it's coming into awareness, it can't be unseen, it can't be ignored, it can only move forward, but slowly, always slowly. Because something this real doesn't rush itself. Now listen carefully. There was a moment, just recently, where they almost reached out, almost said something, almost allowed this feeling to step beyond silence. But they stopped, not out of fear, but out of respect for what they're feeling. Because when something feels this meaningful, people don't want to disturb it too quickly. They want to understand it first. They want to be sure. And that's exactly what they're doing now. They're giving this space to grow, instead of rushing it into something it's not ready to become yet. And that patience, it's what makes this even more real. Because anything that is rushed often fades, but what is allowed to unfold, it lasts. And this is unfolding right now, even if you can't see it, even if you can't hear it, even if nothing outward has changed yet, something within them has. And once something changes at that level, everything else eventually follows. Stay here a little longer. Because what's about to happen next? It's subtle, but it changes everything. They're starting to imagine a moment where this connection is no longer unspoken, where words finally take shape, where silence turns into something expressed, and every time that thought appears, it lingers a little longer than before. It feels a little more real, a little more possible, and that's how you know this is moving forward, not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily, naturally, without pressure, and yet, with undeniable direction. Now ask yourself, why does this feel familiar? Why does it feel like something you've been sensing, even without knowing why? Because connections like this, they don't begin when they're spoken. They begin long before that, in quiet moments, in unnoticed feelings, in small shifts that slowly lead to something bigger. And right now, you're standing at the edge of that something bigger. But not all of it has been revealed yet. Not all of it is ready to be seen, because there's still one final shift, one final realization that needs to happen before everything becomes clear. And it's closer than you think, closer than they realize, closer than you expect. But it hasn't happened. Not fully, not completely, because when it does, it won't feel like a surprise. It will feel like recognition, like something that was always meant to reach this point. And when that moment arrives, you won't have to question it. You won't have to search for meaning, because it will already be there, clear, calm, undeniable. But until then, this connection continues to grow, silently, steadily, becoming something that neither of you can ignore much longer. And very soon, the silence between you will begin to change.